Modern Vintage Radio.
Welcome to the Podcast Planner. I am your host, Addie Saucedo, and I'm excited to let you know that this show is all about podcasting, but with a content creation focus because content matters when you are sharing your voice with the world. Picture this. Today is the day that you finally get to interview your guest for your podcast. As you start the conversation, you quickly find out that they are not as open as you thought they would be. You get the sense that the interview is going to feel like pulling teeth. The thoughts of doubt and frustration start to sink in. And there's a different situation that happens if that wasn't the case. The guest starts to deliver the same scripted answers they've done on other shows. And you start to panic a little and think, how is my episode going to be different from the crowd? I created conversation triggers out of the need to create different and engaging conversations because it's the experience being shared between the guest and yourself that will draw in the listener's attention and excitement. In this episode, I'll be sharing proven conversation triggers that have worked for professional podcasters, producers, and myself. I started podcasting back in 2012 when there was no podcasting manual. Sure, there was one or two books on the topic, but with no actual guides, templates, or checklists. Fast forward to 2016, still nothing. Well, I decided to change that. I have packaged 5 years of my experience into the Podcast Planner. All editions include the complete conversation triggers, content spinner, recording templates, and more to help you with your podcast. Get 2 free templates when you join the VIP email list, or grab the complete planner by visiting thepodcastplanner.com today. The best way to start a conversation when you don't personally know someone is by having a couple openers to help break the ice and set the mood for a great conversation. Here are 3. Number 1, where were you raised? This question works because it isn't a yes or no, and it's one that anyone can answer. This question also takes them back into their childhood. With a few words, they'll start to feel relaxed and a sense of closeness now that they've shared that. Number 2, what is one thing that not many people know about you? Number 3, what does the perfect day look like? Again, these questions are to help start the conversation, so let them know that these answers can be short. On to storytelling triggers. When you have a guest on your show, a lot of what your conversation is going to be about is the what, the why, the who, about the this and that, which in the end, it's a story. Therefore, my belief is that interviewing is storytelling. You're helping them tell their story. Here are 2 storytelling triggers to help. Number 1, tell us about the time when blank. This question reveals a lot of information that is so valuable to the conversation. Number 2, why is this blank important to you? This question gives us more of a personal perspective on the guest. Getting personal gets us closer to empathy or relating to the guest. Now, as the conversation or interview continues, your guest will say things that gives the opportunity to dig deeper. It's the deeper conversations that make it all the better. Here are 3 dig deeper triggers you can use when those opportunities rise while the guest is sharing their story or experience. Number 1, you say their name first and then you say, please voice the debate or the conflict that was going on in your head. Number 2, how did that make you feel? Number 3, can you explain that to us? I like this one because sometimes the guest will be so caught up in their story, they'll assume we know exactly what they're talking about, which is a great place to have the guest. We just need to help them a little bit more so that we're not so in the dark of what they meant by something they said or felt. It provides more context to the conversation. And there you have some conversation triggers to help you create better and engaging conversations to feature on your podcast. Notice how all of the conversation triggers are open-ended and use personal phrasing so that the listener feels like they're part of the conversation and not a fly on the wall. I have 2 favors to ask when you're using the conversation triggers. Number 1, remember that a great conversation happens when you are genuinely interested in the person you are interviewing. Please don't interview for the sake of having an interview show. When you are genuinely interested, you start to listen and engage in the conversation. Which brings me to favor number 2. While you will likely find yourself using 1 or 2 of these fairly often, be sure you don't come to rely on them all the time. Going through a list of questions always makes for a bland conversation. The complete conversation triggers list is included in the podcast planner, but what I have given you today is enough to get you going. I encourage you to have this list written out, start building your own list of tried and true conversation triggers, and have them handy for when you're interviewing your guest. Join me on the next episode to learn the vocal triggers that enhance the listening experience and inspire your audience. This episode was scripted and produced by Addie Saucedo. And that's me. For more episodes, freebies, and information, please go to thepodcastplanner.com. If you like the show, please tell anyone that is interested in podcasting, or leave your honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can follow me on social media, just search Podcast Planner. Be sure to subscribe to the show to make sure you get all of the episodes. Our supporters are Podbean, Team Podcast, Spreaker, Podcaster Society, Podfest, and Podomatic. Thank you so much for listening to the Podcast Planner podcast. Until next time, plan, record, and share your voice with the world. Hey, welcome to the backstage. I just wanted to let you know that I was recently featured on the Home Gadget Geek show with Jim Cullison. We talked about tech, podcasting, WordPress versus Squarespace, using Auphonic, Trello, and much more. A link would be in the episode notes. I highly recommend you go check it out. Jim, if you're listening, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. Now here's a quote that's podcasting related. If you don't know what you want to achieve in your presentation, your audience never will. By Harvey Diamond. Thanks for sticking to the end.